Welcome to the NFL MVP Momentum Podcast. I'm Sam Holcroft, joined alongside Payton Thompson. Before we begin, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP, follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. So today we're going to talk about quarterbacks we believe in and don't believe in. But first, let's do a recap of Week 5. So Zeke had the best week, only getting 4 out of the 14 weeks incorrect. Payton, you were split 7-7. Sean got 5 wrong, which means he got 9 right, and I had the worst week. I only had 6 correct while getting 8 wrong. But some good news for you, Payton. You got a double down. You didn't get your upset, unfortunately. Patriots over Saints. Yikes. Yeah, that was a tough one.
Yeah.
And Zeke also got his double down, and he also got the upset, which puts him in the lead. He has 63 points with a 52-26 record. You are 1 point behind him at 62 points. Sean is at 58, and then I am at the bottom with 57. So, as per usual, we'll talk about our overreaction Mondays. So, PT, you're going to go ahead and start off with Zeke's overreaction.
Yeah, Zeke's overreaction. I don't know quite how you could justify this. I don't think the Eagles have looked particularly good, these last 4 weeks, but or 5 weeks, I guess. I feel like, and, especially including the 49ers in here makes it, I feel like, a little bit more harder to justify. But I think when you look at the forward schedule, the 49ers have, I wouldn't say the easiest schedule, but I feel like they could easily, maybe lose once. And so I feel like, the game that they would lose is against the Bengals at 325. But I have a feeling they're going to win that game as well. It's just how I feel about the 49ers right now. I feel like they're on a hot streak. And the Eagles, they end up playing the Dolphins on the 22nd as well. So, and I feel like that's a game that they could easily lose if they don't come to play. So, I can't really say I necessarily agree with this take, but I feel like it's an interesting take. Obviously Z being the Eagles fan in our group here, he's gonna ride with his Eagles, but I just don't think they've looked very good.
Yeah, I agree. He has a lot of faith in the Eagles, of course. But, it's like if they could get past the Dolphins, like that 49ers Bengals, I feel like that could be a very high scoring game. Just because the Bengals offense finally clicked, for the first time this season, really. So maybe they get on a hot streak, but that would include the Eagles escaping the Dolphins.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely. Now for my overreaction one day, and to me, I mean, I don't know if it's a very big overreaction. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a spicy take, but I don't think it's too spicy. But I think Bill Belichick's time as a top or good head coach is over. I feel like with his career, I think we can both agree, he's a top 3, top 4, maybe top 5. I mean, for sure top 5, but he might not even slip that low as one of the best head coaches of all time. And he's won a lot of games, but I just feel like, with his current personnel, his current roster, and maybe it's not all on him, maybe it's on the front office as well and kind of how they've constructed his team. But it's not like he hasn't really had a discussion or, a place at the table to discuss what he wants his team to look like. So, but I just feel like every game that the Patriots are in, I feel like, the first 3 games, they looked solid, they looked competitive, but I feel like these last couple weeks, they've just really had no fight. And whether that's Mac Jones in the quarterback position or not having enough skill guys at the receiver and running back position, I just feel like if you're a good head coach, no matter who your personnel is, you can find a way to be competitive. You can get stops. Things are going to go your way sometimes. They're not going to go your way sometimes, but you have to figure out how to be competitive. In this last game against the Saints, just didn't look competitive at all, and that falls on the head coach. So for that reason, that's my overreaction of the week.
yeah, and Brady's been gone for 4 years now, I think. And they've only made 1 playoff appearance. Doesn't look like they're going to be going again this year. So, it's like, it's really tough because Mac had a good rookie year, but last year didn't look the best. Eventually got benched towards the end of the season. And he also got benched against the Saints, but that was a blowout. What are they going to do with Mac Jones? They had Matt Patricia calling plays, I think, the last 2 years potentially. So it hasn't been good. And, I feel like I disagree with a little bit. I think it's to the point where Bill Belichick is not going to no longer be the GM of the team, because he's basically the GM too, but he's just going to be strictly a coach now. But at the same time, if they don't have good players with them, then they may not be able to keep the status, and he might be looking to retire soon.
Yeah.
So moving on to Sean's overreaction. His overreaction is Jacksonville needs to be a European team because they can't be beat out there. So for the last 2 weeks, they've played in, I believe, England for both games, and they beat the Falcons and they beat the Buffalo Bills. I have this conspiracy theory. I don't know if it's really conspiracy. I mean, it's kind of came out every now and again that Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, wants to move the team to England. I could see it happening with how crazy the NFL can be. It would just suck having to go, especially if you're the Colts, Titans, or Texans, having to go to London at least once every year, hoping that the NFL also doesn't schedule for another international game. But it would also suck for Jacksonville, because that means half the time they're traveling. Every road game, you got to travel. So as much as, it could be realistic, I think it's just a little fun overreaction just because, they're 2-0 in overseas games this year.
Yeah, I mean, really, I like that you kind of, had a little bit of analysis on the hoops you'd have to jump through to get there. But I think if there is any team that it would be, open to relocating out there, it would be Jacksonville. They're the team that played back-to-back weeks there this week, like Sean said, or you said, they went 2-0. But yeah, there's a lot of things that you have to iron out, and I just don't know if the NFL or Jacksonville's ready for that. But yeah, like you said, I mean, it's a fun overreaction. But yeah, it's interesting for sure.
Yep. Now moving on to my overreaction. The Cowboys offense is not good enough to get to the playoffs. Now, I'm not saying that the Cowboys can't make the playoffs, but in the 5 games that they have played, their defense has had 3 stellar games. They have won those 3 games. The 2 games that the defense did not play stellar, they lost. You want to know the points that the offense put up in that game? 16 and 10 in those games. The defense has also scored, I believe, 5 touchdowns. That's insane. Like they've been averaging a touchdown a game, and they've also lost 2 games where their team put up 26 combined points in those 2 games. That's crazy. This defense is going to be the reason this team makes the playoffs and can contend. But the offense, if it's a game like a 17-10 game or a 17-13 like the Raiders Packers was, this Cowboys offense is not going to be able to win that close game. They can't get the running game going. Dak is super inconsistent, so I feel like that this offense is just not good enough to get to the playoffs on its own.
Yeah, man, as weird as it might sound, and I feel like Jake Ferguson has done a good job stepping in that tight end role. I feel like this offense is kind of missing Dalton Schultz. I feel like that was kind of Dak's go-to guy when they needed to move the sticks. And, I like CeeDee Lamb, but he hasn't really taken that step as like that elite wide receiver one yet, I don't think. Um, I do feel like that the offense would have a little bit easier of a time kind of moving down the field if they had another running back to go with Pollard. That was kind of their thing in the past last few years. And so, yeah, man, I can't necessarily disagree with this. I think ultimately this take comes down to their schedule. And man, their schedule is very split 50-50 for me. It's like, they have games like the Dolphins, they got the Bills, both, and those are both in the last few weeks. The Seahawks aren't an easy team. Obviously, I feel like the Giants you don't really have to worry about. Rams and Chargers coming up here. It's not necessarily an easy schedule, so it's really going to depend on if the Cowboys can win these close games with good teams. I feel like feel like they're the kind of team in offense specifically, because that's what we're talking about, that they can, blow out bad teams. They'll look good against bad teams, but the hard teams, they're really going to have to step up and show that they're playoff worthy, and that's kind of what the playoffs depend on, right? Making the playoffs is they got to beat good teams. So, yeah, man, I would say for this take, I'm just very 50-50. I'm not really exactly sure. Obviously, for me, they're still a top 2, top 3 seed. Um, but this offense has to start clicking. And, it may depend on Dak. Maybe if Dak can step up and make some more plays, then they can go further. But if he's just going to be, same old Dak and on an off game, throw 3 interceptions to Washington, it's not going to work out. So,
Yeah. And also, in the 3 wins that this team has won, the defense has allowed a total of 13 points. So, it's real easy to, average that. What would that be? 5 points? No, in 3 games? 13. Yeah, it'd be 5 points. It's really
yeah.
easy to score 5 points in the NFL, especially when your defense only a shutout, 10 points and 3 points is how much that they've given up.
Right.
When they don't do that, they've given up 28 to the Cardinals. Cardinals aren't a good offense, and 42 to the Niners. That's a good offense, but giving up 42 is a little rough. So,
Yeah, I mean, how different would that be skewed if they didn't play the Giants week 3, or week 2, whatever week it was? How much would that be skewed if they didn't like, basically, not basically, they did shut out the Giants, and so I mean, you just can't depend on that.
true. All right, so now we'll move into what I like to call the meat and potatoes. So we have 3 categories, and we each have 3 quarterbacks. So first category is I believe in, and we're going to name a quarterback. Second category is I don't believe in, and then number 3 is I still believe in. So PT, you can go ahead and kick us off with I believe in.
Yeah, so I believe in Jared Goff. I think that, I feel like when he was with the Rams, he wasn't really asked to be that kind of next level guy. He was he was drafted high, and he won a Super Bowl ultimately, or he didn't win a Super Bowl. He's the guy that couldn't get them over the hump to the Super Bowl, right? That's why they had to acquire Stafford. Um, but I feel like when he went to the Lions, they weren't really expecting much. Expectations were low. They didn't really have quite the offense around him that they wanted. And, maybe this speaks volumes of Dan Campbell, but when I watch Jared Goff, and this might sound crazy, but he looks like a top 7, top 8 quarterback to me. Week in, week out, he puts up the stats, whether Amon St. Brown is in, whether Jahmyr Gibbs is in. No one saw David Montgomery coming in and putting up the kind of touchdown numbers that he is, that he's putting up right now. So it just feels like this offense kind of revolves around Jared Goff, and he's really putting it on defenses. And I saw that firsthand when they played the Falcons, and he's played super well. I feel like mentally he's kind of progressed really well since he's been traded. And yeah, I mean, hats off to him and Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I think that's a good take. Like expectations weren't the best. They were probably like, what? We traded for you. We're just gonna draft a quarterback next year. And then I think he showed some sort of sign like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we might keep this guy around. And then last year, almost making the playoffs with him. And so far this year, like you said, looking like a 7 or 8 top quarterback in the league. So especially in a team that might end up being a run first team. So
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny that you bring up Jared Goff for your quarterback that I believe or that you believe in. So quarterback that I believe in is the guy that also was part of that trade, Matthew Stafford. So I don't think I said this at all on the podcast, but I wasn't a big believer in the Rams this year. I thought that they were going to be tanking. I thought that they were going to be getting rid of it. I wasn't big on Matthew Stafford, but I believe in Matthew Stafford now. Because let me ask you, PT, did you hear of Puka before the season started? Did you know who he was?
Not at all.
Okay. Did you know Tutu Atwell before the season started?
Nothing.
No? And they both have had multiple 100-yard games, some clutch catches and touchdowns. And then there's also a guy named Cooper Kupp who just came back from injury. You know, although yardage wise and touchdown wise, I think this was Matthew Stafford's worst game, but they almost like they were still fighting with the Eagles, who is still a top 2 team in the NFC. You know, he's been averaging almost 300 yards. He is averaging an interception per game, but I mean that's just because like they are a throwing team because they don't really have a running back that they believe in. But I still think that with Cooper Kupp back, you know, and with what he was able to do without Cooper, I believe in Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, 100%. I think you didn't really, mention this, but I think the biggest thing is they're winning, and when they're not winning, they're, super competitive. I feel like they were slated in to be one of the worst teams this year, and they haven't really looked like that at all. If anything, I think a good comparison to them would be like the last year Seahawks team with Geno Smith, a quarterback that, people thought wasn't really a starter level kind of guy. In this case, Matthew Stafford, who has won a Super Bowl as a starting caliber guy, but he's getting a little bit older, and so people's expectations for their production has been low. And so, yeah, I mean, like you said, not having really notable receivers, not really having much of a run game either. That he's done everything you can hope for that he can do with the team. So, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And I'll go ahead and just go with my guy that I don't believe in. And the guy that I don't believe in, Dak Prescott. I mean, it kind of goes with my overreaction Monday here that the Cowboys
Mm-hmm.
offense is just not good enough to go to the playoffs. So my thing about Dak Prescott is he has not had a game where he's thrown for 300 yards, which I mean, you know, with today's game can happen. But at the same time, let me make sure I pull this up and I'm not saying anything that's incorrect. If I can find him, here he is. So he also has 4 turnovers on the year, especially 3 to the 49ers, which I will say is probably the best defense in football. But yeah, listen to this for yards per game. In a game that they won, 143 yards. Another game that they won, 225 yards. A game that they lost, 249. A game that they won, 261. And a game that they lost, 153. He's averaging a touchdown a game, but also his rushing numbers, not good. You know, Dak has been known to like get some rushing yards. He has every season. I think he gets around like 300 or so rushing yards. Right now, he is at like 40 on the season. It's been not so good, and I just think that it's just offense mostly. But he's the quarterback, so he's the catalyst of that offense.
Yeah, I would say a good way to describe Dak this season, and really, you could say throughout his career, besides the few games that he's had. I mean, I don't want to say few. I don't want to underplay it because he's had good games. He's had a couple good seasons, but he's very at times he can be a very pedestrian quarterback. I think sometimes he can play down to the level that he can play down to because the Cowboys defense and run game is so good. And so, I feel like we really have yet to see the offense really ask Dak to throw for a whole bunch of yards, throw for these touchdowns. And, maybe that's a sign that the offense and defense is pretty good, maybe not. But I feel like you said, like we just really haven't seen Dak hit that next level when he's getting paid to hit that next level. And that's really what, like you said, your overreaction. That's what it's going to take for them to get to the playoffs. Is Dak has to take that next level. The offense has to take that next step to be better than other teams. And when the defense is doing everything they can, I mean, the defense is great over there in Dallas. So, like you said, it kind of is going to depend on him to take that next step and show that he's worth the money he got paid for.
Yep. So who's the quarterback you don't believe in?
So for me, it's going to be Deshaun Watson. Now, I feel like Deshaun is kind of a hard quarterback to put my finger on exactly because he's had obviously top four, top five quarterback seasons in the past with much worse offenses on paper than the Browns, right? But when I watch Deshaun Watson play now, it just seems like he's a bit of a shell of himself. And I don't know if age is really going to get him back to that. I feel like he's always going to be a quarterback that's going to be, I guess dependable, but he's he's not getting paid to be dependable. He's getting paid as a top 5 quarterback in the league, like he was coming off that Texans season when he got traded. So I'm not exactly sure if it's because he took this season off or season and a half off, to deal with that legal stuff, if that's kind of what got to him. I don't know if it's, not having complete trust in his teammates or vice versa, the teammates not having trust in him as a leader, as a person. And for all we know, it could be that Kevin Stefanski is just a very big run heavy kind of guy. So he's not going to put a bunch of pressure on the quarterback. But when I look at Deshaun Watson and I watch him play, it just seems like it's a mistake waiting to happen, whether it's an interception, whether that's a fumble, whether that's taking a sack when he doesn't need to. I always felt like Deshaun in Houston was a guy that was going to be able to extend plays, not take those negative yardage plays, be a smart kind of quarterback. And I just really haven't seen that since he's been to Cleveland, and that's been well over a year and a half now. So I just don't think he's going to get back to where he used to be, which is unfortunate for them because they put all their chips on him as well as draft picks. So tough evaluation there.
Yeah, with Deshaun Watson, he came into the league in 2017 and he was, gosh, I remember watching, I think within 4 games, I was like, this guy's going to be like the Russell Wilson. And at that time, Russell Wilson was, a top 5 quarterback every year, led his team to the Super Bowl twice, a couple, I think one other NFC championship game, I believe. Um, but I was just like, this guy is going to be a stud. And, in 2020, he was like statistically, he led the league in touchdown yardage. I don't think he got the touchdown passes, but he almost beat the Chiefs like early on. I think it was during that run that they went to the Super Bowl the first time. And I just remember like Deshaun Watson, he was probably one of the, I would say, top 5 quarterback that I liked to watch from his rookie year to like basically his whole Texans tenure. He was one of my top 5 quarterbacks I love to watch because the way he extended plays, like you said, just like his downfield throwing, like, I liked watching him at Clemson, but like when he had D Hop and I think Brandon Cooks was there for a little bit too, maybe
Mm-hmm.
maybe that 2020 season, but just like just seeing him go to work, it was just really fun to see, and it's just kind of tough to see where he's at now, um, because he is on a run heavy team and he has decent receivers, but I just don't think that the system he's in really meshes with his playing style. So it's just kind of tough to see where Deshaun Watson is now, knowing that he was at the pinnacle in 2020.
Yeah.
All right, so PT, who's the quarterback that you still believe in?
Not gonna like this, but it's Lamar Jackson. I feel like, and I know you don't like Lamar as a quarterback, but I feel like he is still a top 7 quarterback in the league. I feel like when through his career, I mean, we can just talk about the last couple years and this year specifically. I just don't know if the offense is surrounding him with enough talent, and it kind of seems like a cop out. I know every year, but I can't say that any of his receivers are top receivers in the league. Obviously Odell coming off a big injury hasn't been the same. Zay Jones has been okay, but he's a rookie after all. Um, and I can't really name anyone else on that offense. And then you look at that, or at least on the receiving core. And then you look at the running backs. I mean, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill. I just don't think that these are kind of high profile guys that you can say, here's my quarterback, this is the offense, and let's go to work. But even then, he still puts up great stats. And they were 3-1 before losing to the Steelers, which they should have won. And of course, throwing that interception in the end zone, that's on him. He can't do that. That's a mental lapse. But at the same time, then you got to put it on the defense. They let George Pickens and Kenny Pickett go down the field to win the game. And so, I feel like they could easily be 4-1. They should be on top of the division, in my opinion. And obviously he got paid. So I feel like the Ravens feel the same way. It just feels like they don't have enough really helping him on offense to get there. Maybe that's because he asked for all that money and they gave it to him. Maybe that's a part of it and that's on him. But if you look at the actual statistics of how he's been playing this year, he's been playing good. I don't want to say he's been playing great, but I still believe that the Ravens are a good football team on offense. I just feel like they could take it that next level if they would have been able to get a guy like DeAndre Hopkins or a veteran that is going to be a stable presence for him to launch it downfield. And I'm not trying to say that he's a guy that needs to pass a whole bunch. That's just not his game. But I feel like he could do a bit more if you just gave him a bit more weaponry.
Yeah. And I think that, a biggest part of that offense that they haven't really been able to use the last few years is J.K. Dobbins. So J.K. Dobbins going down is a huge part of this. But I don't believe in Lamar Jackson. One, I don't believe that he could stay healthy. The last 2 years he has had health issues, staying healthy, especially late in the season when the team needs him. And just late game decisions. Like, I remember vividly the game last year against the Dolphins, and then there was another game that they ended up choking away, which was a huge upset. I don't remember off the top of my head, but he played bad there. The pick in the end zone, that's 100% his fault. He threw it right to Joey Porter, but at the same time, you do have to look at John Harbaugh and his coaching staff. You get the ball at the 7-yard line after a pick, and you can't punch it in the end zone with 3 rushes
And
when
why?
you have
I
Lamar
mean,
Jackson.
why are you even throwing at that point?
Right, exactly. Because there was 2.5 minutes left when that pick happened, I believe, or maybe it was
Yeah.
under probably 2 minutes, and they threw it on 3rd and goal.
Yeah.
So, and it was questionable calls. And this last game, sure, his wide receivers had 10 combined drops or whatever, maybe close to
Yeah.
that, maybe even a little more. But late game situation, everyone needs the quarterback to be on his A game. That's just a fact. Especially when you become the highest paid quarterback in NFL history, you need to make the right plays, especially against a really bad team like the Steelers. How are you only putting up 10 points against the Steelers? And the Steelers haven't even scored 20 points this season. So
Yeah.
I just don't believe in Lamar Jackson. But if you still believe in him, that's okay. By the end of the year, you'll be on my side. All right. So the guy that I still believe in, I have been talking about for almost a year now, and I still believe in him, even though I know that you don't, PT. But it is indeed Justin Fields. Now, PT, I'm going to ask you a question. If we were to rank from 1 to 32, 1 being the best, 32 to being the worst, where is Matt Eberflus as head coach in the NFL?
Probably 30.
30? Yeah, I would say probably bottom 4. Okay.
Yeah.
What about front offices in the NFL? Probably bottom 6?
Let's say bottom 8 for sure.
Bottom 8? Okay.
Yeah.
Now with the inclusion of Chase Claypool out of that receiving core, where would this receiving core rank?
Bottom 10.
Bottom 10? Okay,
Yeah.
so my point is DJ Moore, best receiver. Sorry, let me correct. Only receiver on that team is, you put him on any other team, he's probably wide receiver 1 on 5 teams. I believe.
That's fair.
I think he's a solid number 2 on most teams. So with my thing is everyone points the finger like he's the problem. Which, I mean, you get the slander when you're the quarterback and your team isn't winning. Makes sense. But his surrounding factors are not helping his cause. They're tanking for Caleb Williams, sure. But I hope that he can find a team that will actually take care of him, get him an offensive line, get him a coach that knows what he's doing. Because I'm going to tell you what, Justin Fields, did not blow that game against who they play. Oh, against the Broncos 2 weeks ago. Yes, he did have that fumble, but then what did you do? You went for it on 4th and short in field goal range with 2 minutes left. Your defense then gives up a field goal, and then what does he have to do? Because he gets the ball with like 40 seconds left. He has to throw it, and he has to force it. And then he throws that pick. You can't put your quarterback in that situation. Just take the points and just trust in your defense. But that's not what happened, and I think Matt Eberflus is a big reason why Justin Fields got scapegoated for that loss against the Broncos. And I just think that, is Justin Fields, top 20? Probably not. He'd probably in that like low 20s. But if he had a reliable running back and an actual alpha wide receiver along with DJ Moore, I think he's top 20.
Don't really have any disagreements with me. I mean, I don't know, and I've talked to somebody else about this too. I don't know if I gave off the impression. I mean, maybe I have a little bit when the first couple weeks started because that's kind of how he looked. But I may have given off the impression that I think Justin Fields is like, some kind of bottom 5, bottom 6 quarterback. I don't think Justin Fields is a terrible quarterback or anything like that. I just feel like he has some critical flaws that he's going to have to work on if he's going to be successful in this league. Talking about vision, we're talking about, like you said, not forcing the ball when it's not there. And like you said, that may be part of the offense's issue and the head coach and things like that. But if I were to rank the top starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now, I think he would sit firmly at 19-20 for me, which I feel like is pretty fair. And so with that being said, I don't mind this take. I feel like you said, I feel like it's good to still believe in him, but maybe not in this offense. If you were to play in a different offense or some kind of different scheme that actually played towards his strengths and didn't try to make him into, a pocket passer quarterback who has to, analyze the field, then yeah, he definitely can be successful. And he's so young that you can't really put on any labels that he's not going to be good in the future. I just think right now he has a lot to work on. So yeah, that's kind of what I think. So I don't mind the take.
Yeah. If it was, do I still believe in the Bears? Heck no. Justin Fields is the only one I still believe in on that team, maybe alongside DJ Moore.
I was going to say, yeah, DJ Moore's kind of proven me wrong because I didn't really ever think that DJ Moore was like that good. But I think, like you said, like we talked about, he's a good, pretty good number 2.
Yep. All right, so now we'll move into our upsets, double downs, and picks. So Zeke's upset of the week is the Texans over the Saints. So this one, we have only one disagreeing here, and guess what? That is Zeke. We all agree. Saints. Wait, PT, do I see that right? For the first time this week, or for the first time this season, you are picking the Saints to win.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it. I mean, I think I like the Texans this year. I think the Texans have made a lot of progress within these last 5 weeks. But man, every time I choose the team over the Saints, they just burn me. So it feels like, taking this pick is the right choice. Obviously, you have Derek Carr, who's, the veteran quarterback. I feel like they have a little bit stronger wide receiver core, especially with Tank Dell being out. And when it comes down to it, they just have a better defense flat out. So, yeah, the Saints are the pick here.
Yep. So, PT, who's your upset?
Yeah, my upset is going to be the Bears over the Vikings, which is a decent segue when we talk about Justin Fields. But this game is less about Justin Fields and that offense and just overall team than it is about the Vikings. I feel like the Vikings have looked so putrid and just flat this year, and obviously their games have been, you could say their games have been competitive, right? They've been somewhat close. But it just feels like every time I watch the Vikings, they just look like a team that is coming off of a year like a Super Bowl hangover where, yeah, they had all these wins this last year, and now they're kind of going in the other way, and they're kind of just going on a downward spiral. And then you lose Justin Jefferson, who's one of the best players in the NFL, best receiver, in my opinion, in the NFL. And I just don't see how you could look much better than how you have looked. So Yeah, man, I just feel like the Vikings are due for a really bad season, and then if they lose this game, they may be looking for Kirk Cousins trades.
Yeah. Uh, just to reiterate, I've done it probably about like 5 or 6 times now. 11-0 in one possession games last year. They are 1-4 on the season, and that means also 1-4 in one possession games. So I am going with the Vikings here, even though JJ is out. I still think that the Vikings are the superior team, but like you said, this is more important for the Vikings than it is for the Bears, because if the Lions win this week and the Vikings lose, you have to give up on the season. You can't make up that deficit and try to make the playoffs, especially in the NFC, where a lot of teams look like that they're going to be competing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep. And then Zeke also agreed with you with the Bears, and Sean also went with the Vikings, so we have a 2-2 split there. Sean's upset of the week is the Commanders over the Falcons, and only one person went with that, and guess what? That was Sean. All three of us went with the Falcons. Um, I just think the Falcons looked good last week against the Texans, and you know that that Commanders offense, they have a good running back in Brian Robinson and Terry McLaurin, but I mean the Commanders, yeah, they're 2-3, but they just haven't been looking the best this year. Other than against the Eagles, I don't think that they've been looking that good.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I have pretty much the same analysis. I think the Falcons looked good last week, and I think if you take out that game in London with the weird travel stuff, and obviously the Jaguars being a decent football team, I think the Falcons overall this year have been pretty solid. We just can't go away from that run game. I know we talk about it on game day a lot of the time. Falcons can't go away from what makes them good, and if the defense can be even 80% of what they usually are against Sam Howell, I think we'll be just fine.
Yep. And my upset of the week is the Buccaneers over the Lions. Now this was kind of a tough one for me, but I feel like a bye week for the Buccaneers going against the Lions, who is fighting to be one of those top teams in the NFC, is definitely, benefits them. They're still trying to figure out, like, are we really this good? Well, this is their first true test, in my opinion, on if they are a true contender or not. Because like we've said, like top 10 on paper, maybe top 5 still, maybe. Baker's been playing good. I mean, the Lions, they've still been good. They beat the Panthers last week by 18. It's hard to do that in the NFL, even if the Panthers are, potentially the worst team in the NFL. But I trust the Buccaneers here, and that they did a good job on their very early bye week.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, like you said, is that bye week. Also coming off the bye week, playing at home, and I feel like the Buccaneers are very confident. Baker Mayfield has looked pretty good, and so yeah, I mean, pretty much just reiterating what you said.
Yep. And you also went with the Buccaneers, while Zeke and Sean went with the Lions. So that wraps up our 2-2 splits. We only had 2 this week.
Yeah.
So going on to our double downs, Zeke, as per usual, we all know this, the Eagles over the Jets, and we all have the Eagles here. I don't think that this is necessarily a trap game. Eagles finally, I feel like last week was finally the week where I was like, you know what? Like, they didn't play bad. It was a close game, but they didn't play bad. Like, they shouldn't have lost that game, where every other game you could have been like, they could have lost that. Against the Rams, I really didn't feel that way, and I feel like we all probably feel the same way.
I feel like it is a trap game for the Eagles, but I don't think that the Jets are gonna sneak out with a win. I feel like they're gonna make it competitive. They're gonna put pressure on Jalen Hurts and that offense. But when it comes down to it, Zach Wilson and that offense just isn't going to be enough to counteract the Eagles' offense. I feel like this is going to be a somewhat lower scoring game. I'm looking at about a 3 point spread, 20 to 17 ish. But I do feel like if the Eagles mess around too much, this could be a trap game because I feel like some games the Eagles looked a little bit out of sorts, and if they let the Jets get an early lead on them, they're going to have some pressure on their heels. So I still have the Eagles winning because I think they're going to be the superior football team on offense. But I feel like the defense is going to give them fits, and they can't let it slip away.
Yep. So PT, you're double down?
Yeah, mine's going to be pretty simple. It's the team I've been going with all year, the 49ers. I mean, 49ers have just been clicking on all cylinders. They look like, I think, in my opinion, by far the best team in the NFL, aside maybe the Dolphins. But when you look at the two defenses, and I don't want to get into too much of a comparative 49ers Dolphins thing, but I feel like the 49ers are the most complete team in the NFL, and I don't think the Browns are going to stop that from happening. And I think it's simple as that.
Yep. Definitely agree. And all of us went with the 49ers as well. My double down for the week is the Bills over the Giants. We've been watching all season. Even though the Bills did kind of stumble last week against the Jaguars, the Giants just have not looked good. With any team that they've played, even against the Cardinals, who they beat, I think their only win this year. They just haven't looked good at all. So, and we all agree that we're going with the Bills. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. That was
yeah,
actually
yeah.
that was Sean's. That wasn't mine.
Oh,
Sorry.
gotcha. Well, I agree with
Okay.
it either way, whether it's yours or Sean. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Giants are just terrible, and the Bills are going to come off this loss, and they're going to want to take everything. So, yeah, they're going to
Yep.
win this
Okay. So now, actually, for my my
one.
double down for the week is the Chiefs over Broncos. We all agree with the Chiefs here, but they've won. I think it's 12 straight against the Broncos. Even though the last two have been single digits, but obviously those games don't matter now. But the Chiefs sneaking by against the Vikings and the Jets in back-to-back weeks, and the Broncos I feel like are comparable. They almost beat the Jets last week. So like the Broncos is kind of like on that same level as the Vikings and Jets. You can't have 3 games where you scrape by in a row, especially when you're supposed to be the top team in the AFC. So I think that they're going to come out and they're going to, put up 30, and they're going to make sure that that offense for the Broncos doesn't move the ball.
Yeah, it's another one of those cases where it's just one team is that much greater than the other team. That's all you really have to say.
Yep. So then another overseas game, we have the Ravens Titans. We all agree that the Ravens should win this one. PT, go ahead and explain why we think this.
Yeah, the Ravens should win this game. Will they? We will see. Because they tend to struggle against teams that they should be better than. But I feel like them coming off a loss, they're going to want to clean up a lot of that stuff that they should have done better at last week. They know they should have won last week. Obviously, there's no real home field here. But I just feel like this, and I don't know, it might really come down to Lamar on that offense. And I'm kind of, I guess, going away from what my overreaction or my quarterback believe in is. But I feel like this is going to come down to whose defense is better, and I just feel like the Ravens' defense is that much better than the Titans. And I just don't have much faith in the Titans' run game at this point. I don't think Derrick Henry's really looked the same. And yeah, I think the Ravens are going to be able to move the ball.
Yep. The next game that all of us agree on is between the Saints and Bengals. We all agree the Bengals. We all saw what they did last week. Yes, it was against the Cardinals, but that offense finally is clicking. Seahawks, have looked fairly good. They did have a bye week last week, though, so maybe that could help them out. But we all still believe in the Bengals, and the turnaround has started last week, and they're gonna keep the ball rolling.
Yeah, I have one sentence. Joe Burrow is back, and he's at home.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you need him to start playing well if you're going to get that MVP. You know.
Yeah, yeah, he's gonna have to be electric, man.
Yep. Uh, Panthers Dolphins. I don't think we need to spend any time on this. We all agree that Dolphins.
Yeah, don't need to say anything about that one.
Yeah. But Colts Jaguars. If you want to say why we all believe the Jaguars are going to beat the Colts, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about all of us, I think we all believe that the Jaguars are going to start hitting their stride on offense. This is kind of what we've been waiting for. I feel like coming off those two London games, their offense getting going, they're going to have confidence that they just beat the Bills. I don't really think that the Colts are going to stand a chance. Not in front of the Jaguars. The Jaguars finally get back at home. They're going to be all comfortable. Trevor Lawrence is going to be there. Hopefully, he plays really well. I think he will. And also, the Colts are going to be without Anthony Richardson. So I do think the Colts are going to have a nice little Zach Moss, Jonathan Taylor back and forth. But I think when we talk about what works in the NFL, that's passing. I think passing is the new wave of the NFL, and the Jaguars just have it.
Yeah. And all I'm going to say is if the Colts do win this game, then Sean's overreaction probably isn't an overreaction anymore.
I mean, fair enough.
Next is the Patriots Raiders. We all agree here. We're agreeing a lot this week. Normally that doesn't happen.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
But we all agree with the Raiders. We all know what happened last year. Jacoby Myers cost the Patriots the game by throwing it backwards. Chandler Jones picked it up and ran it for a touchdown. And Jacoby Myers is going to be the reason that the Patriots lose this game again.
Yeah, I have zero faith in the Patriots really doing anything in this game. Obviously, I don't know if you've seen this. I'm sure you've kind of kept tabs on it, but they've still had Mac Jones as their QB1. I don't believe that's going to change anytime soon. They're going to roll with him, and if they end up being bottom three team in the NFL, then kind of living with that. And so, I feel like if I wouldn't have put Deshaun Watson as one of my quarterbacks, or my quarterback that I didn't believe in, it would be Mac Jones. He's just looked really bad, and like I said, I mean, it might have to do with that offense, Bill Belichick, kind of getting a little bit older, personnel stuff. But yeah, I have no faith in that offense.
Yep. The second to last one we'll talk about, Cardinals Rams. We all agree that the Rams should win this game. PT, you can start it off.
Yeah, I think the Cardinals will be competitive in this one, like they have been these past few weeks. But I feel like Cooper Kupp getting a second game in action here should look really good. And I feel like, honestly, the Cardinals don't necessarily want to win games. And I feel like last week we kind of saw that with Josh Dobbs. He kind of looked a little bit more pedestrian like his backup quarterback self. So, yeah, I feel like the Rams are just going to stay hot.
Yep, I agree. And then the last game, the Monday night game between the Chargers and the Cowboys, we got one person disagreeing, and that's Zeke. Zeke's going with the Chargers here, probably just because he doesn't want to go with the Cowboys. But I think that this could definitely be a bounce back game for the Cowboys. They get two primetime games in a row. And this is going to, put to the test, what I said in my overreaction. Is this offense going to actually do something? Because this defense, although I think it's still a great defense, they're coming off of a bye week, but they have not been looking that good. They have given up a lot of yards to the Vikings. They give up a lot of points and yards to the Dolphins. They were shut out against the Raiders. Every game you can pick something that they did very bad that can cost you games. This team is 2-3, but they are very lucky that they are 2-3 because this Chargers team could be 0-5.
Yeah. All I know is the Cowboys cannot afford to lose this game, because if they lose this game, it's really going to feel like they're going backwards, and they just can't afford to do that in this division and in this conference in general. So I feel like they know they're going to need to win this game, and it honestly just feels like a game that Chargers are going to drop, because that's what the Chargers have been doing lately against good football teams. I feel like the Chargers are a good football team. They're not a great one. I feel like the Cowboys, as long as their defense plays up to standard. Um, I don't want to say it, because we kind of just talked about it, and you'd never want to see a quarterback play down to his competition. But we're going to see Dak be very pedestrian, this offense be very pedestrian once again. But the defense is going to make it, so they'll be okay.
Yep. So, is there anything else you need to add on?
No, go Falcons.
All right. But so there was a quite a gap in the standings. You're right behind Zeke. We'll see, because if he has another great week, he might just start pulling ahead. We need the Eagles to lose so we can stop getting that double down. Those 2 points every
Yeah.
week is costing us.
Well, we'll see if that trap game hits. Like I said, watch out for that game, man. I feel like it could hit.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
But once again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP. Follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. I've been Sam Holcroft.
I've been Payton Thompson.
Thanks for listening.